Okay, guys, so today's message is about parentification. I have stumbled upon this concept and subject so many times throughout my journey over the last 6 years. And I am so amazed to know that every time I stumble upon it, I learn something new about myself, about the concept, and how much diving in the deep I am in it. You know what I'm saying? And how this is innately a part of my journey with my own kids. Now, I know we never ask for it, right? We don't ask for these types of things. But I don't really think that we dive deep enough to figure out why these type of things show up in our lives. You know, some of this is generationally passed down, and I'm not blaming those that came before us, but I'm not going to pacify and bypass where a lot of these things are showing up in our lives and why, right? We all have, I wouldn't say blame, we all have accountability that has to be taken for the way we move, operate, and the things that we go through and experience in life. And so for me, I'm going to give it to you raw. I'm going to give it to you real. And I'm going to give it to you based off of what I experience and what I research and, what just channels through my spirit. That's how I move, because I feel like that would be the authentic way for me to show up in the world. And that is my intention at all times. Not perfect, but intentional, and authentic. So with that being said, how parentification has shown itself as being evident in my life as a parent to three beautiful little girls. First off, when I envisioned having children, I didn't envision having children and being left to raise them by myself, right? But I also didn't envision having children with men who would even consider for a second of leaving me to raise them by myself. And I think a lot of this came with shame once I found myself, not once, not twice, but 3 times in this situation with 3 different men, of raising my babies by myself, and each one leaving or either signing their rights away as fathers. And I took the blame on, and the shame and the guilt, and I've been wearing it, and I've noticed that it has been showing up in how I parent my kids. It's not that I don't love my kids, it's that I am in a phase of transitioning out of feeling shame and guilt and blame for bringing them in this world, loving them so much, but them not having a 2-parent household, and me and them having to grow with one another where I'm either the bad guy in their eyes, or I'm either the good guy in their eyes, or I'm the emotional wreck, or I'm the held together, I'm the tension one, or I'm the peaceful one, and there's 2 sides to this coin for me, because I don't just see things linear. I see them very much so multidimensional. And this part of the experience would be no exception. And so with that, knowing, You know, I know it's not my fault that their fathers decided not to stay and stick around and be here for them. And I know that them doing and making that choice had nothing really so to do with me, but it definitely had a lot to do with them, and their traumas and their filters and their journeys and how they saw me. Now, there was a lot of red flags with dealing with these men that I wasn't aware of because I was in my own traumas and my own filters, and I was only seeing everything in light and love and potential. And I didn't have that capacity of awareness yet of needing the other aspect, which is my darkness, that dark divine feminine energy, because if I would have had that intact, then who knows, maybe things could have been different. But since I'm learning that should've, would've, could've's are thieves within their own right, I'm operating in the what I do know, and what actually took place, And so, with that being said, as all of this pertains to parentification, I noticed that because I have had to take on the role of being a mother, we say, you're only the mother, you can't be the mother and the father, but if we have to be honest for a second, even if we don't say that we're taking on the role of being mom and dad, as being a woman and being a mother without having that support from the father, ultimately, without saying, in a sense, we move and survive and thrive and filter from both aspects of masculine and feminine, right? And it's so easy for those of us who don't have kids and who never really experienced this to be able to say things like, you're a mom, you should only be thriving in your divine feminine energy. You're supposed to, you have daughters, raise them from your motherness, or you have sons, raise them from the motherness. But nobody really goes deeper and talks about how it becomes like a default for us, especially if we have intergenerational or generational ties to this being something that has just been going on and on and on and on. So not only are we carrying how our ancestors, not only are we carrying how we filter these types of situations and experiences, but we're also carrying on how our ancestors carried forth these and dealt with and adapted to these type of situations, right? And so the word superhuman or supermom, those things are stigmas, yes, but honestly, they're stigmas that in some capacity have become real life personas and archetypes and stereotypes, and and as much as we try to fight it off, like, or much as we say, I'm just going to be the mom, it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to feel it, and it's another thing to embody it, and it's another thing to move in it. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate that before we are able to even catch on to what's taking place, how we're raising our kids are picking up on it faster than we are. And so, something I've experienced in my own experience of this is, my oldest daughter feeling like she has to bear the weight and become the second mom of the house, or feeling like she had to take on or stabilize the high, intense emotions and anger and all of those things that came with me like realizing that it was not only my choices that landed me in this position, but the capacity of not having the awareness to not put myself through this 3 times, right? And also dealing with the shame and the guilt of, and then kind of in a sense filtering my kids or seeing my kids. So it's like, it's not my kids who's the problem. It's the fact that their fathers left me. So when I see my kids, I see, a mother who stayed and loved them and wanted the best for them. But I also see on the other side of that, I also see a father who decided that they weren't worthy enough in his eyes to stay because he didn't feel worthy enough of staying with them. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't feel worthy of the love and the devotion that the mother was giving to him, So self-sabotage played a huge role in not only their lives, but also my life and decisions, and also then therefore carried through and affected the children, And so something that made this very, very loud for me recently, y'all, is that my daughter asked to go on a camping trip for 2 days. And immediately I went into fear mode, right? And started finding every bit of evidence as to why she couldn't go on this camping trip, And a lot of it came from fear, and a lot of it came from fear of my own journey of adults not protecting and watching over me properly. But also a lot of the fear came from ancestors who were not protected and watched over as kids, whose parents or life situations and circumstances put them in positions to never be protected and to never be watched over and to never be, truly listened to. You know what I'm saying? And also what came up with that is the fact that I have grown so codependent on my daughter taking up the slack. And even though I tell her, all the time, like, Trey, you're a child, be a teenager, go hang out with your friends, ask to hang out with your friends, go live life, go explore, go have fun, go do this, go do that. Even though I say these things to her, she is looking at and feeling through what I'm saying, and it doesn't filter out or through her as, the things that I'm saying. It filters out and through her as, okay, I can't do these things. I can't want more. I can't desire to have more. I can't ask for big things. I can't ask to go on camping trips. I can't ask to go on trips. I can't ask to hang out with my friends because I have to be a support system for my mother who's going through and dealing with her own shame and guilt of why she doesn't have a village or support system, not only around her, but also around the very things that she loves and cares for and wants to do better for and wants to have a better life for, And once I filtered through all of that, and the root of it being, it wasn't that she couldn't go on the camping trip. And it wasn't that I didn't want her to go on the camping trip. It was that I've had her by my side for so long. And she has been my backbone through so many ways when it came to me dealing with men, when it came to me dealing with fallouts with friends, when it came to me dealing with fallouts with family, when it came to me dealing with, raising her other siblings and the realization that that was going to be my reality. She has been my backbone. She has been my stabilizer. She has been my emotional my emotional barrier and carrier for so long that it made it so hard to be able to say, okay, Trey, okay, yes, you can go on this camping trip. Because inside of me, I was feeling like, how am I going to survive 2 days without her being with me? How am I going to survive 2 days without her being by my side? How am I going to survive being in the house with her siblings without her being the stabilizer of the home? You know what I'm saying? And it was in that moment where I feel like I had a heart-to-heart moment, not only with my inner child, but also with my higher self. And I realized, and I feel like in a sense, my daughter spirit too. And I realized that I was not being fair, and that the very thing that I was trying to avoid and not send her through is what I actually was sending her through. And I didn't know fully and awarely that that's what I was doing until this moment surfaced. And so it wasn't a fear of her going on this camping trip, because I vetted, I got the information, and she's going on the camping trip with her school. So it wasn't the fear of that, but that is what I told her it was the fear of. But the real fear was, and then I had to double back and tell her the real fear, once I figured it out for myself, is that I was afraid that if she goes on this camping trip, for one, she's going to figure out how good life can be without having me or her being here, being my backbone. And she was going to not need me anymore, or she was going to not want to be around me anymore, or she was going to abandon me, And it was like, and in that moment when I expressed it to her, and as I'm hearing myself tell my teenage daughter these things, I'm realizing multidimensionally that, oh my gosh, I went through this. Oh my gosh, my mother went through this. Oh my gosh, my grandmother went through this. Oh my gosh, my great-grandmother went through this. Oh my gosh. Now I'm sending my oldest daughter through this, and it has to stop. So with that, I ended up taking accountability, right? Owning up to what I did, owning up to how I felt, and not judging myself, but giving myself permission to choose differently. Giving myself permission to move in the number 5. And if you're studying numerology, if you studied numerology, number 5 is equated to change, transition, and so I had to step in that number 5 energy and say to myself, honey, you've been a mother for 15 years and you held it down. Then you've been a mother for 12 years and you've held it down. You've also been a mother for 4 years and you've held it down. And yes, your daughter has been a big part of you being able to hold it down once her other siblings came. But remember, before they came, you held it down with her. And you are in a space of healing and have grown so much that you don't need her. You don't need her to stay near your side. You don't need her to be your backbone. You don't need her to be your guardian. You don't need her to be your watch over. You don't need her to be your stabilizer or your soother. You don't need her to do that. What you do need is for her to have an opportunity that you didn't get to have. From a space of healed love, support. Yes, when I was her age, I was able to go out, I was able to do things and stuff like that, but I wasn't able to give myself permission to fully experience those spaces and places and things from a space of healed. Yes, my foster mom did the best that she could do. Shout out to my foster mom. Who I eventually started calling Mama J. Miss Jackie, shout out to her, Um, and I appreciate her for allowing me to be able to have those moments where I was able to get out and go to places without her being around in order to gain independence for myself, in order to gain responsibility for myself, in order to gain self-respect, in order to see the world without having to have an adult there to catch me every time I made a bad decision, or checkmate me, or anything like that. There was moments where she was there to do that, but then there was moments where she was like, okay, I'm going to let you fly from the nest for a little bit, and see how you navigate those terrains, those territories. And I'm so grateful for those. But then when it came to my kids and the type of choices I made and not having support and the things like that, it just feels like everything started crumbling. And because she was the one that was there, she became that fill-in space for the lack of support and village that I didn't have for myself, or for her, or for her siblings. And so I just want to say, I say all of this to say, y'all, we are not responsible for the things that those before us did. Although there are some of us who have been appointed from our lineages on both sides to change the trajectory, rewrite the trajectory, and to create new ways of being for the lineage to move forward and transcend the things that were not serving us in the highest degree, right? Even though there are those of us who have been appointed to do that, it still doesn't mean that we are responsible to carry the weight and the burdens of those times on behalf of our ancestors. We are responsible as adults to learn the history of the past, to learn what could block us in the present, and to learn how to heal and transcend those things so that in the future and in the present, we can live and thrive from those things, not be held and captive in those things, and continue to raise forth generations in those things, right? So my challenge for y'all today, or whenever you make the time, is to, especially if you're mothers, or if you come from a mother who this may have taken place with you and your other siblings, take a moment to just see what, where, and why these things took place. See where you may have taken on the responsibility of picking up the slack where other adults were meant to take on that. And see where you now can transition out of that and hold the adults accountable for, putting you in that position, because the truth of the matter is, even though you're an adult, you still feel these things. And we may try to suppress them. We may try to go, oh, it is what it is. No, it is not what it is. It is not what it is. And that's why we are all in a space where we don't know how to communicate or express ourselves, or to receive the type of love and genuine connections that we actually deserve, or to let people go, is because we think, oh, it's family. Family goes through these type of things. It is what it is. Or love is like this. It is what it is. No, it is not what it is, y'all. Being a kid who had to grow up too fast because your parents were not responsible and couldn't hold their shit together and get their shit together to raise you in a home of love and integrity and support and empathy and compassion and stability within themselves, and stability within each other, and stability within your connection and how you were brought up in your environment. That's not an is what it is moment. And I just want to be honest with you. A lot of parents are not going to want to hear you out. A lot of parents are not going to want to discuss this because it is uncomfortable as fuck to have to take accountability and see yourself as, through your kids' eyes, as someone who is perfectly imperfect. Because we all want to see ourselves as perfect in our children's eyes. Because we all want to see ourselves as perfect in God's eyes, as God being our parent. And that's a part of the problem why we don't have a good relationship with God or feel like we're disconnected from God. It's because we don't trust ourselves because of the choices that we made. And we feel less perfect or less seen in God's eyes. And we feel disconnected as fuck. And so it's a trickle effect. Everything is interconnected. Everything is interwoven. Everything is not linear. But in order for things to be healed, we have to recognize that as we're on this spiral of healing and we're unpeeling layers of where pain and trauma and hurt and things of that nature were swept under the rug for comfortability and traded off for comfortability instead of accountability, we've got to give ourselves grace and permission to allow ourselves to feel these things, heal through these things, go through these things, to see through these things, right? And we've got to allow ourselves to, on the conversation and topic of parentification, we've got to allow ourselves as parents to take accountability, right? Not judge yourself because you didn't know better, you know, but to take accountability and get to a space where we want to change and shift that for our children, you know, where we sit down and have that hard conversation with our oldest daughter who had to feel like she had to take on the slack, or even our oldest sons who felt like because of the choices and decisions we made that landed us in a shitload of hell, you know, that they're responsible for easing the pain and bringing the comfort and being the stabilizers and the backbones and, you know, not being able to live their lives because we decided that we wanted to do this, and because things didn't turn out the way that we thought that they would turn out, now we're soaking in our sorrows and pitying ourselves. And I'm saying this carelessly like this and loosely like this, with the truth existing in the fact that I do care about this deeply. But I don't attach myself to this because I know that because I've become aware of this, that means I get to give myself permission to heal this and rectify this and make things better for my child. And so, yes, how I took those actions and steps is telling her the truth. I sat her down and I had a whole conversation with her and I told her the truth. And I let her know, after I did her prayer work over her, after I did her ritual of protection and all of that over her, after I sat down with my spirit team in the Most High and got the guidance that I needed in order to allow her to go without holding on to being responsible for if things fell apart at home while she was away. I ended up getting to a space of stabilization for myself without her. And by the time her camping trip came, I went from being afraid of whether or not she was going to return back home to me safe and sound, and being afraid of whether or not I could actually hold it down and do what I needed to do for my other two children without her presence being there. By the morning of, I was helping my daughter, giving her her mojo bag of protection to stay, so she could stay protected, giving her her prayers written out. So if she needed comfort, she had her arsenals, her tools in her arsenal bag. Giving her her hugs, her kisses, giving her some laughter, some jokes, and reminding her that for these 2 days and moving forward after you come back, you need to return to me safe and sound. And you need to return to me with the knowing that what you've experienced on this camping trip is what you deserve to experience as a teen, as a child, without any other added on fluff or bullshit for your mother and your father's choices and decisions. Now, I know this is going to be a hard video to listen to because it's going to ruffle feathers and it's going to trigger you. And I mean, I was very keen and aware and forthcoming when I told you that on this channel that we're not holding back. We loving, we telling the truth, we taking accountability, we holding each other accountable. And we moving towards the steps of healing and progression and transcendence, okay? And elevation and self-love. We're not staying stuck because we're not meant to stay stuck. So that is my message for y'all. I need to go have lunch with my little baby girl. And then I need to go pick up my other baby girl from school. And so this is Staisha signing out.